Welcome to Season 6 of the Stories in the Cemetery podcast. This season, we're shaking things up a bit with deeper questions into the paranormal. And to do that, your host, Nicholas McGurr, has invited the owner of Amen Paranormal Research, Joshua Amen, to be his co-host. To learn more about their studies and articles, visit storiesinthecemetery.com, or you can check out the Paranormal Investigation Workbook or the Paranormal Investigator's Almanac, both available on Amazon. Stories in the Cemetery takes you ghost hunting in Charleston, South Carolina, and reveals his findings from those investigations here on the Stories in the Cemetery podcast. Let's get into today's episode with Nick and Josh.
All right, everybody, we're back again. We keep coming into your ear holes because you keep listening. We thank you for that. So I am Nick from Stories in the Cemetery, and my co-host,
Joshua Amen from Amen Paranormal Research.
So this is episode 68. This is launching at the late August. So if you're a college kid, hopefully you're moved into your dorm room by now. And yeah, I'm just going to tell you at the time of recording this, it's still cold in my part of the world. So we are light years behind you. But this episode is going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to do any show notes. We're going to dive right in. Josh is going to lead the way. And you've already seen the title of the episode. So Josh, tell us, what the hell are we talking about today?
So we are grilling you on the SITC Scoring System.
Okay, I'm ready. So I guess first question.
All right, Nick. Let's see here. Where do I start picking at your system here? Honestly, I think we should start with how you built the system, like how you built it, where it came from, how did you test it, how did you vet this system? Because you're all about vetting things.
Yeah, I am. So the system started because the interactive ghost hunting experienced people, my muggles, would always ask me how haunted was the time we just spent together. And I didn't have an answer. I was like, well, shit, I should probably come up with something to try to see how this actually works, because it piqued my own curiosity. So I started with kind of like weights and measures of how activity comes through different devices and started to put something together. And I changed it probably 1,000,000 times over the first 4 to 6 months of using it, not only on the tours, but vetting it against things on the TV shows. With the TV shows, I'll tell you, because everyone will say, well, how can you do that? Just based off the evidence, because the scoring system is based off of how much time is spent on an investigation. It's not a matter of asking 100 questions and getting 3 answers. It's a matter of getting 3 answers in a short amount of time. So you can ask that 100 questions in 10 minutes. And if you have 3 answers, could be something lucrative. We just need to know the methodology and the math to be able to do that. So kind of did some guesstimating on the math based off the TV shows of how much time they were spending at the investigations. And the SITC system was born and is forever evolving.
Yes, and I applaud you for somehow bringing horrible math into the paranormal.
English guy doing math. I know. It's a oxymoron.
I love the system. I love the system. I love how it works. I think my biggest struggles with it is not understanding how it worked.
Okay.
Because, yes, I can read it. Yes, I can understand what it means. Not operating an investigation with the understanding of how it is scored is the biggest fault. Because going back, reading through and being like, shit, I got to go back and listen to that EVP and I got to count seconds, or I got to, write down all of this stuff. Like, if I knew, if I had gone around it a different way and it was, I think, explained to me, or at least put into the book, that I needed to tackle it from take down notes, write down, like, we asked these questions and this is the answers we got, or in taking notes throughout the investigation would have made it so much simpler to put the score together.
So, and I'll tell you the same thing that I tell my guests when they're trying to I guess, interpret the data in real time, like during
Mhm.
the ghost hunting experience, you're overthinking it. And it was really meant to be a simple process. And it is completely speculative based off of the real time moment of when it happened. Like this was kind of, I'll give you an example. So last night's investigation, I don't count conversational pieces as like, hey, how are you? I'm great. How are you today? I'm doing well. Oh, that's awesome. Like I don't count that shit as
Mhm.
paranormal evidence. It doesn't
Right.
have the three N's in it, the names, nouns, and numbers. As far as communication go. So I did have my folks last night had that type of interaction, and they had three direct answers because somebody apologized to the spirits after I told them several times to be respectful. That if they offended them, they were, I'm sorry if I offended you. And then the person on the spirit box who had their spirit box loud enough to where they couldn't hear the person asking questions or talking to the spirit said, "Don't be." So it was kind of there's one direct reaction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a viable answer, but not verifiable. So they had three interactions like that within like 30 seconds. So, and it was a continued conversation. So I counted it as 1 point, not three.
Okay.
So I gave it the benefit of the doubt because of the interaction that it was, and it wasn't just a one-time occurrence, that may have been a coincidence that they got three viable answers, that I took it as, okay, this is one occurrence. Now, in regards to you going back and saying you have to count seconds and whatnot, I did put in the workbook for visual evidence, say on any kind of video, and you have a good size, we'll just call an intelligent orb moving in different directions that's not going with the movement of camera. You could verify that it's definitely not a natural occurrence, to go back and count the amount of seconds that occurred for. And that's something that could happen, where you would have to go back, and an 8 second type of find is worth 8 points. Like that's validated. Like that's good stuff. However, when you have something like an SLS camera and you're not really sure, sometimes those go in and out. And
Right.
especially if you're using like a Ghost 2 app and that kind of thing. So they go in and out. So sometimes you have to catch the screenshot. And what I did for that type of instance was the screenshot is worth 2 points because it's visual.
Okay.
So now the easiest way to do this is any type of communication that comes through is worth 1 point each. So if you have something that you can verify, that's a name, a noun, or a number, it's worth 1 point. And it doesn't matter which part of communication it came through. So I don't need to know the call and answer because it doesn't always have a direct answer. I might ask the question, what's your favorite color? Or what was the color of this plant or something in real time? I might not get the answer right away. I might get the answer 5, 10, 12 minutes from now because of the way we use spirit box and communication devices. So I have to just take it as, if the color blue comes up and I know for a fact that that's, a factual thing, that was their favorite color, then that counts as 1 point no matter where it came up, as long as we were in that space. That's how I look at those. Anything visual is counted as 2 points for each screenshot. And then if it's an elongated video worth seconds, then I think it has a weight value of 1 point per second. So 2 points on visuals, unless it's elongated actual video to watch, and 1 point for communication each time. And that's the breakdown aside from EMF readings. So we haven't gotten into that yet, but stop overthinking. The workbook is there for you to take notes. I use the system every day. I got the shit memorized because I use it every day. I do have a worksheet that I fill in. It's a template that I use through Google Docs, and it's based off of the equipment that's in my tool bag. And I already know the point system in my brain because I have it memorized. I created it. Of course I do. So literally, it takes me 2.5 hours to go through 8 to 12 hours worth of media because I spot check it. I count up the points. I put the score at the top and post it to the website. It's that simple.
Gotcha. And for your starting investigators that are using this, obviously you broke down quite a bit of it right there.
Mm-hmm.
But like we talked a little earlier about a good EVP I had on one of my scavenger hunts.
Right.
And it was a direct answer, but it was broken up. So it came in through the spirit box, and the listener said, my name is, and there was pauses in between the words, and then we got the name Carl. So it's like, you count that as 1 point because it's a direct answer, or do you count it in the seconds? because you're talking about visual media versus audio media. Like, it could get confusing for somebody who is overthinking it in that aspect and thinking, okay, well, I did have it on video. It comes across just 5 seconds. Do I get 5 points for that?
No, I would count it as 2 points. And here's why. First off, you had a direct question, which was, can you tell us your name? Am I correct in saying that that was the basic gist of the question?
Correct.
Okay. Then the phrase, my name is Carl, showed up. There are only 2 nouns in that sentence. You have name to verify it, and then you have an actual name. So I would count it as 2 points. And that's the end of it. Plain and simple. The video piece is just the verifier, because it's really all about the communication. Again, I don't care if it shows up on a word generator, an Envoy, Spirit Box. It doesn't matter to me. It's a matter of what was the communication. If it falls into one of those 3 N's, it's 1 point. With that being a direct answer, I would validate it with, well, there are 2 nouns in this particular instance. I would count it as 2 points because it was almost like a conversation that could be verified.
So does it state in the workbook to use that as like name, noun, number?
No, that is something new. This is actually a great question. So within the past, I would say 8 or 9 months, I had somebody ask a question on one of the tours of, how do I listen to this? Like, and what am I, because everything you're telling me, I'm telling you isn't viable because you can't prove it. So what should I be looking for that you can prove? I was like, well, there's names, then there's, obviously numbers. I can look at dates and ages and, those kind of things. And I was like, and nouns, you can prove nouns because you can look those up. I was like, so really, if you break it down, it's 3 N's, names, nouns, and numbers. And yes, that's something that's going into the 2025 workbook.
Nice. I think that'd be awesome. So when you add a new piece of equipment every single time you do a workbook, when you first started this, there was quite a few pieces that were not included. What does the evolution of the workbook look like so far?
So you're right. We did start off really basic, rudimentary, just to see how it worked. EMF meters, that was probably the biggest part of the scoring system, because EMF is such a variable piece of, I don't want to say verifiable, but it is that first question of, do we actually have a haunting? You know what I mean? So let's debunk things first and then look at. But as far as the evolution, it was very basic. So camera, I think we were only using a thermal at the time. EMF meters, a handful of spirit boxes, and I was trying to keep it simple just to make sure this was actually going to work. And then the following year, on the tour, I guess I should say the first year that the 2023 workbook was out, we started doing the Estes method. So then I was able to start measuring that to see and look at the weights and measures of, like, what does that look like and how can we add that into the workbook? So that went into 2024. And that was a hard one to do, just because it's a short amount of time that we do the Estes method for. So everything has to be based off of the amount that I spend. And there's multipliers and dividers based off of what another paranormal investigator would spend as far as time. So I spend 2.5 hours on a full tour in general, and only 10 minutes of that is part of the Estes method. But somebody might spend a 5-hour investigation and do a 30-minute. So then you have dividers to make sure it matches up into that 2.5-hour, 10-minute time frame that I use to get a reliable score. So I took that into account, and those dividers and multipliers are in the back appendix of the workbook. It can be confusing. Hell, it confuses me sometimes, and I have to stop and talk about this. But again, you have to take into account with the Estes method, the 10-minute, I was looking at all of the answers, and I took 25 to 30 investigations, and I looked at what we had out of it. 2 regular answers on this one, 3 on that one, 5 on this one, none on this one. And I kind of had to do the balances of answers that could be verified. And when I tell my folks that are going underneath the Estes method, you're going to tell me everything you hear. That includes yes, no answers, things that I want it to be conversational. So that way we could see if it's a direct answer that I can prove. Are you buried at this location? Yes, I can verify that. So that's something else. Those are the types of questions. You have to be very careful with questioning when it comes to the Estes method. But this year's workbook, we added the visual part, and it's pretty easy to add this part to it, of the Seer app. So it was something that we started last year with the Estes method, making it a little bit more exhilarating for my guests. And that's easy because it's a visual. So if the image is relevant to A, the conversation, or B, just the ghost in general, that's 2 points per image, just like in video.
Now, this coming year, obviously you're looking at what to do to add into the newest one.
Right.
What are your options of, because obviously we're going to run out of equipment at some point, because we own most of everything between the two of us. There's not a lot left. Like, what is next? Is it adding in something that's a new piece of equipment? Is it adding in more techniques? Is it adding in a different way to look at this, or refining something that's already there?
It could be any of those things. It could be none of those things. And let's face it. I mean, I've been fortunate enough where the first 2-3 workbooks have evolved. Where something I was like, okay, let's try this, let's try that. Does this work? Does this not work? We're working with a piece of equipment right now that doesn't always capture something. So it needs to have a little bit of a heavier weight when I do capture something with it. And I'm still testing it, so I don't want to add it into the workbook just yet. And that would be the EMF mic. So again, I don't have enough data for that to be able to verify that this is a great piece of equipment that needs to be measured when you're doing an investigation, because I don't think a whole lot of people are going to be using it based off the data that I'm finding. But could the 2026 workbook be the same as 2025? Yep, absolutely. And that's my honest opinion, where if I don't have something new, revolutionary, or new methodology to be able to verify that this is working, or something like the Estes method brought into play. But there's plenty of pieces of equipment out there and we've discussed them on previous episodes, the God helmet, the Delco goggles. These are things that I haven't played with, but those would have to be very controlled experiments in order for me to be able to add them into the workbook, just because it's not something that I think I'm comfortable with giving to strangers. The Delco goggles, probably, but as far as like if I get a God helmet and I go with that expense, it needs to be for personal use only, for sure. So, but yeah, could I have a few stagnant years? Yeah, I think the workbook could stay the same for all the way up to 5 to 10 years until we really start pushing on people to start evolving shit and go make something new. Or you and I come up with some of these ideas and put them to fruition once we find some crazy, tech geek that we can say, hey, go build this because this is what we think is going to do.
Right. Now, you brought up an interesting point. Talking about weighting something heavier because of the lack of evidence that you're getting from a device.
Correct.
Does this mean that you currently have things like the SLS and the thermal in the workbook weighted as heavier point values?
True. And I think and I don't know if this stems from just my skill set of communication, because that's what all of my degrees are in, that I'm so used to it that to me it seems to come easy. So communication does have a less weight, but something visual to me is harder to find. So SLS, thermal, infrared, those things should be weighted more, just because they're harder to find, and that they have a different value because it's using a different sense. Like, we're not hearing it, we're seeing it. So I think that plays a different part on our psyche when we are investigating, or even for the muggles when they're doing this for the first time. So that's actually a really good question.
I mean, the whole objective here is to try and, push on you and make sure that you're getting your money's worth. So this episode is, the SITC Scoring System, badgering Nick.
It's not badgering at all. I love showing people how this works. And again, I talk about it on the tours. It has been recognized, by, I've mentioned it before, other societies, another magazine. I want to show people how this works, because I think this is going to be the bridge gap that we need to push shit to the next level. So this episode of this, what we're talking about right now, is probably going to be promoted a lot on my website, just because it's a how-to video, how-to audio, how to use the damn workbook. And it'll probably be used for years to come.
Yeah, and I think some of the big points that we're going to ask now is lowest scores you've gotten, highest scores you've gotten, and the perceived perception of how this works. Because the first time I used it, and I didn't even completely fill it out all the way, because it was just so, I was still having a hard time grasping the concepts. But, my score obviously was way lower than I would have expected, because I felt like, I had a decent investigation. But then I think it's the multiplier that really fucked me up.
Okay, and that's fair.
You know, because the multiplier, it's a 5-hour investigation, so I'm looking at cutting my number by 2.5. So, and that put me in the dumps. Like, that puts me at a really shitty number. And I think understanding how that worked, you know, and understanding like what you look at as far as like what your average scores are, what your low scores are, what the highest score you've gotten is to date, because I'm sure you have it written down somewhere.
Yeah, I think I do actually. And it actually went off my chart.
I mean, knowing you, I know you've got numbers everywhere. There's something everywhere. For some damn reason, you included math into everything we love.
I know, percentages and all of that. We didn't even talk about EMF and how that is scored. And I think that actually probably confuses most of the people I've talked to about this from emails or it actually confuses people the most because they don't understand like how it's actually weighed. And I try to simplify it as easy as possible. So EMF, as Josh and I have talked about numerous times on the podcast, I'm sure you guys are done hearing us talk about EMF, but it has to be weighted in a different manner. So that was weighed based off of what I normally see from an average of a whole night of the different locations I go to. And what I decided was because a K2 meter goes to 25 milligauss, that 2.5 to 25 is actually worth 1 point. Because that's the highest you're going to be able to get out of a K2. So if you're investigating out of, with just a K2, you're only going to get single-digit points out of it, like for the SITC scoring system. So that kind of values, I don't want to say the expense of what you're going to get what you pay for with a millimeter or with a EMF meter in general. So I always use a millimeter because there are certain spaces I go to that like they will spike that thing out and it goes 8 times higher than a K2 meter. As we've discussed before. So 2.5 to 25 is worth 1 point. 26 to 50 is worth 2 points. So every increment of 25 milligauss, it goes up by 1 point until you reach 100. Anything over 100 is worth 5 points each because they are so hard to reach. So, and it has to be over what your baseline is if you're inside of a building. So if your baseline, we're just going to say is a 15 from a bedroom because it has lamps on, the alarm is plugged in, you're getting a 15 baseline without any activity going on. It has to be 2.5 to 25 above that. So you have to basically go all the way up to 40 before you can reach that 2-point skill level.
I think that's a great point. Because I when I did Gila County Jail in Arizona, they have cables, literal like electrical lines running alongside the building outside the window to the point of where I could have stuck the meter out and slapped the wire with the meter.
Wow.
And
a lot of wiring.
It really ruined some of the experience because then you sit there and you think, wow, I've seen this on like 3 or 4 shows. They got EMF hits. Now I know why.
Right.
Because it made my meters practically useless.
Right.
So, along that line, you would be looking at like, you'd need to have a millimeter just to be able to read anything at that location.
Right. And a millimeter, for listeners, in case you forgot, goes all the way up to 200 milligauss. Again, K2s go up to 25 and a tri-field meter goes up to 100. So just for point of reference for anybody that is using any of those and you're using my SITC scoring system, that's how you're going to measure it. That's why a millimeter is best. So that way you can get the maximum amount of points out of it. Because again, even if a tri-field goes up to 100, it's still going to error out. Like I've seen that happen before and you don't know how high it went. So you kind of, all right, do I give it just the 1 time 5-point score for that? Or did it do it twice? And I don't know because it just stays above that in that error. We don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess because I'm like, depending on the device, like it just makes it easy, So, like, if your base ghost hunter is using a K2 meter, they're using the K2, and it's like, oh, it went off 1 point. Oh, it went off again 1 point.
1 point.
Oh,
right.
We got another spike 1 point. Like it makes it really simple.
Right. And that was the point.
I definitely see the the confusion of it for some people, because they're like,
Yeah.
but I got all the way to red.
Yeah. It's 1 point.
Yeah. I feel like it might not be so much confusion as it is arguments.
No, it's literally been confusion, because I mean, there's a lot of math involved with this. You just have to do the calculations quickly in your brain, so that way you can, out of the communications, I got 6 points. Out of EMF readings, I had 12 points. You know what I mean? And then you just add up those whole numbers and do it that way.
Now, have you ever considered that the system is built around your 2-hour timelines, and it might be a little heavily weighted against someone doing a longer investigation?
No, that's why the multipliers and dividers are there. That's exactly why I put those in there. So that way, if you are so if somebody goes in and investigates, for an hour, then again, they have to use the multiplier to be able to get up to the score. So they have to multiply it by 2.5 in order to get their natural score. So if they had a good hour, super great. That's the way it was designed. So that way it's all based off of that 2.5 hour. Because I really feel like it's a compressed amount of time for any investigator to be able to work with the SITC scoring system. So it can't just be, we got the same amount of activity you did in 2 hours, and ours took 5 hours. Mm-hmm. Well, then you had a worse investigation because it took you longer to get that amount of activity.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I designed it that way. But as far as going back to the question of my highest and lowest scores, I've seen scores as low as, I want to say 8 on a tour. And I've seen scores as high as, I want to say it's like a 112 or 114.
Oh, wow. Now, what is the cap? Like, what is the ABCD of your system?
The score numbers are 100. It goes up to 100. Like, I wanted to do like something as basic as 100. I never expected to find anything ever above that. I don't have a workbook in front of me, so I'm going to have to go to my website. So let me click over to that.
You should have this all memorized, Nicholas.
I do not, because I'll be honest, the average score is, between, let me just get to it.
You're supposed to be the father of the SITC.
So, and the cool thing is, for any of the people that have taken the tours in the past and you looked at your data, the header for your set of data is actually color coded. So I make sure if it's 0 to 15 was your score, you have a red, because that's 0 to little activity. I wouldn't even count that as an active investigation, because anything that small could be coincidental. So that's kind of how that works. 16 to 29 is below average. 30 to 45 is a normal night. That's a normal investigation to get that type of score for 2.5 hours. 46 to 60 is above average. And then I start naming them a little bit differently after that. So 61 to 75 points is undeniable proof of the afterlife. Like, there's no argument that with this amount of activity and this compressed amount of time, that especially with what we have something going on. 76 to 90, a thorough, not spot check, research of all media is needed. We also have to remember that the scoring system is based off of a spot check plus real-time moments. And then last but not least, 91 to 100. This is where it gets lengthy. The investigation data needs to be submitted to a second team, and the locations need to be investigated again under the exact same conditions: weather, moon phase, dates, tools, and equipment, just to see if that's what's influencing it, to gauge it a little bit further. So it's almost like you'd have to wait a whole nother year
just to do it again.
Just to do it again on the exact same day.
Interesting. Now, I have to ask more questions about this 112. I honestly, I have not been keeping track. I don't know if we're ready for a break.
Where are we? Let me see. Yeah, we're about a halfway point. We could do a break.
All right, well, let's go ahead and do a break, and then we will come back and start questioning you about your 112 and why you broke the system that you built.
Oh, I got to find it then. All right, quick commercial break, everybody. We'll be right back. Shit, now you're going to make me find that thing.
Are you planning your paranormal investigations? Or are you just taking a date when your whole team is available?
Now you can plan your investigations based on the conditions of your environment. Introducing the Paranormal Investigator's Almanac. It's just like a farmer's almanac, but for us, ghost hunters. Stories in the Cemetery has designed a system to score paranormal investigations, telling us how haunted an investigation is, and now you have that information available at your fingertips with the Paranormal Investigator's Almanac. With 375 investigations listed, you'll have the moon phase and percentages, temperature, number of devices used, and so much more for you to look up the best time to go ghost hunting. Never before have you had so much data before you started investigating. Our SITC Scoring System is available for you to use after your investigation in our annual Paranormal Investigation Workbook. Don't just go ghost hunting, go paranormal researching to expand your knowledge of your hauntings. Both of these tools are available on Amazon, so before you spend cash on yet another REM pod, pick up the tools you need to enhance your investigations before and after.
All right. So we are back and we are still questioning Nick. I've been pushing him to dig through things and look for stuff. So we're going to go back to this 112.
Okay.
So you built a system based on 100 points and you broke it. So you got to tell the story now.
I did dig through in the break that we took in between, and I explained to Josh the way the data pages are set up on the website. It would probably take me 30 minutes to go through each page because they're that long. They're pretty lengthy, so I couldn't find it immediately. However, I will dig through and post the link and kind of make it live again because it's probably in the archives. It was that long ago. But here's how the story went down. So the first part of the night, we were at the Pinckney Mansion site, and the EMF was going nuts through the roof. It actually reached error status 3 times. If I'm recalling, you have to remember I do this 5 to 7 nights a week, so I'm trying to remember everything that happened that specific night. The EMF, when it broke over 200 milligauss on the thing, I don't want to say I doubled the points, but I probably gave it a little bit of extra value just based off of speculation. It wasn't something designed to take on 200 milligauss, so I just kind of maybe gave it an extra point or two, so that kind of bumped up the score. But it did it multiple times and stayed above 100 for a good amount of time. So I have to take each of those readings at a 5-point value. So that probably gave us, I want to say, probably close to 50 to 65 points right there. Obviously, the communication pieces, we'll get anywhere between an average of between all communicators, between 8 to 15 pieces average. We probably had closer to 22 to 28 that night. And that's me just, I guess, guessing. So now we're up to that 78 to 84 roughly point scale. The rest, this was also before I think I was doing the Estes method. So now that you're jogging my memory, we were investigating a park and I kept feeling spider webs on me. And every time I felt a spider web on me, the person using the SLS camera was filming me. And there was a person touching me exactly where I would say I was feeling a spider web either on my arm. So I must have been wearing a t-shirt. So it must have been a night because I remember it on my arm and elbow, the back of my neck. And then I want to say there was a push on my leg. And all of this was validated with the SLS camera of a figure basically following me around the damn park. So with each one of those, I mean, I don't think I was doing the elongated video at that point. So there was a lot of 2-point markers that built up to that 112. So you're talking probably 10 to 15 screenshots that were taken that were counted at 2 points each for that specific instance. But that team that night, they grabbed onto the concept of how to listen to spirit boxes really well. And then the EMF meter, you can't control that. So Josh did ask me during the break, did I go through it thoroughly afterwards to be able to give it that instead of just the spot check of going back and forth. And I probably did, but probably didn't have the labels on the way that I did, like I just mentioned them before the break. But I probably went back through the spirit box recording one more time and probably found an additional 6 to 8 more points out of that after listening to it from start to finish. that's why I spot check. Spot check is actually really good, indicator of how your night actually went. I mean, our spirit box recordings are usually about 2 to 2.5 hours long, depending on how much time I spend with the guests.
Wow. So now going back through all this, as a score that breaks 100, how does that work now? Because now we're looking at, you've broken past your 100, this is an extra credit assignment at this point. Like, how does that work into your system? Like, does that kind of help reconfigure? Is it just an absolute anomaly? Like, have you got anything else close to that?
It is a rarity that I can get a 2.5 hour investigation over that 45 to 50 mark. So if I see anything above, like, we'll just say 40, I usually get excited because I can start to see, like, when I'm adding things up, I'm like, yeah, this was a good night. I'm already up to 40. You know what I mean? And then I can see that 45, and then a 46 happens. Now we're above average. It is a rare thing to get an above average night. That's why it's called above average. The average score that I see is in, that 30 range. So 30 to 38 is about a normal average, but of course I wanted it in good amount of increments, so that way I can have a good baseline. But does it break the system? Yes. Is that a huge fucking anomaly that occurred? Yeah. Have I seen other things close to it? Maybe some 70s, but not many. Maybe one or two of those. Okay. So, but yeah, am I going to redesign the score because I had one night where it was over 100? No, I'm not. It was a great night. It was super fun. The guests had a blast, and that's all I can ask for.
Yeah, well, fair point. Now, with the system, with the score, do you remember the weather conditions? Because we've talked a lot about how this affects things. You've done the moon study. We've talked about the IR aspects to it. I would love to know what the weather was and how things looked.
Again, I must have been wearing a t-shirt because it was a cool enough night. So it must have been between March to, I'm going to say, July, August. So it must have been, again, I start wearing a jacket come August all the way through February. So it must have been warm enough. Do I remember the moon phase? I don't. And what's funny is I don't have the almanac in front of me because those charts are actually all on a, well, they're in the almanac, but they're also on a flash drive that I didn't bring to the office with me today because I didn't think I was going to need them. But yeah, that's the gist of how the scoring system goes. I'm not going to change it as far as numbers go. I think the weights and measures are solid enough until something else evolves in that range of scope of equipment. So if something changes, then of course I'll reevaluate. It may not change by much, but I will adjust it just based off what's happening in the field.
Gotcha. And I mean, this is super like in depth and super like picking at things and not trying to like screw with your system, but just trying to get in there and ask all the questions I think anybody would be wanting to know. And you include all of the temperature, environmental factors into, when we're talking about it. And that's just to kind of verify like whether or not you're having a better night because there's a full moon or a new moon or, right, how that affects things. Now, weather-wise, we've also talked about overcast days, cloud cover, and how that would affect things because we're starting to think that maybe your theory and my theory correlate to the point of the IR, being blocked out. Or not the IR, the UV being blocked out by cloud cover. Now, right, is this something that you're going to include or possibly put into the future workbooks so that we can then say, okay, well, cloud cover was heavy, so moon and sun now have no, we take that piece out. It's almost like having a new moon. Now,
with the reports that I give back on my website to the guest, it does include the weather in 5 different phases. So it's like clear, mostly clear, partly cloudy, cloudy, and if there was rain involved. So those are like the 5 that I put inside their report. And that's just, what's funny is it's also in the almanac. So for those of you that have the almanac already, you'll notice the temperatures in there, one of those like sky conditions, as we'll call them. And rain, if it's involved, it's only because I normally don't do an investigation during the rain, but if we have a quick little 5-minute spout here in Charleston, because that can happen, I'm going to continue with the tour. We're just going to find shelter, hide the equipment, and then get back out when the rain is done. So that's the only reason, like, that's a notation, just in case. But the reason I'm gauging those things and keeping track of it is because I don't know. So if I start to see, like, where somebody came and did an investigation in Charleston, I'm not going to say you have to come here to do an investigation, go wherever you want. But if you have the same conditions that I have and you got roughly the same score, that's valuable information. But if you have the same conditions and a whole different type of score, like you went way above it or way below it, that's also valuable information, because that could rule something out. We just don't know what that is yet. Whether it be the UV portion things that you and I discuss, could be the temperature. It could be that the moon phase percentage matched up with the temperature. Like it's the same number. Like we have a 66% moon and it's 66 degrees outside. That kind of thing. Like we don't know what it actually means. So as long as we have a record of it, like I'm almost being a meteorologist at the same time, just keeping track of it, just in case. I also put in like any kind of weather anomalies. So if we have a hurricane that comes through Charleston, so a lot of times I'll put in hurricane day before, and I had a tour the night after. You know what I mean? So, any kind of major weather event, I'll put in snow, because we'll get snow here every 7 years. So I'll just put in snow previous 2 days or whatever, just something on the notation. So just so it's marked. You don't know that, maybe one ghost in Charleston remembers when they had a snow day and that was the best day of their life. So when it snows again, that's when you get more activity out of that location. We don't know. Again, it could have a number of factors, scientific or historic. We just don't know. That's why I'm keeping track of it. Does it mean anything yet? Not yet, because I haven't been able to analyze anything yet.
Gotcha. Now, everybody is obviously welcome to send back their almanac so that you can continue to compile the data.
Right.
Have you thought about including that kind of stuff in there where it's almost like a circle, like, it was partially cloudy and we had an extreme weather, or, it was very cloudy and we actually had a thunderstorm. Like, have you put those options in there to make it almost to where it's more controllable, I guess, to validate the data?
So if a team, another investigator does an investigation, fills out the worksheets, sends me the data so I can validate their score, I will include their investigation data in a row of the charts in the next almanac. So if I do an investigation that night and then they send me an investigation the same day that it happened, but I get it like a month later, it'll be included, but I'll probably make a notation of what team it came from, or something along those lines, just so they get recognition, like, hey, this one on March 1st was done by so-and-so paranormal. That way they get the recognition, and then the data will literally be on top of each other so you can compare the differences. So if they're in California, like yourself, let's say you do an investigation, you send me the data from, yours, and I had a tour that night, it'll just line up inside. So if I get 5 of those, there'll be 5 of the same day. You can look at all of them and kind of see where they're at.
Yeah. So, I mean, that would be definitely interesting to see if same weather conditions meant same scores, or things kind of lined up. Also,
or
we
the
have
opposite.
we also have to take into account, like, for example, like the location I'm investigating, that's going to be my normal everyday kind of deal is I'm looking at, I've got so many deaths at the location that death date anniversaries is a more commonality than yours is.
Right. Yep.
So, that could make a huge difference.
Good.
I could have a really good day 10, 20 days out of the year compared to, the 4 or 5 ghosts that you have that are, you have, secured death dates,
Right.
Where I have over 100 spirits that, have death dates at this location, and some of which it seems like are all close together or on the same days.
Interesting. Now, it's also going to be validating. Like if you start getting, you notice that certain dates that are relevant, you're getting more interaction with their names and something else, their spouse's name, or their children, whatever things that you can validate along with those dates. Like that to me, like you're at almost a better advantage to have higher scores, just because you have a better location. And that's, I guess, the stem of this, and it's perfect segue actually. I invented this not only for my own use, but I am tired of seeing posts and advertisements for places that are called the most haunted. There's no such thing because we don't have a system in place in a national or even international placement yet where we can say Josh's location in California is more haunted than the 5 spaces that I take my folks. And it might be the case. That's the whole reason for the system. What is the most haunted? And you need to do it repetitively, the same spaces. That's another thing I don't like about TV shows is that if you find a space where you had a good score, or we're just going to call it average, to me, you need to do it again and again and again, and then go back on a specific date that you know is relevant to them to see if that score spikes even higher to go above average or that undeniable proof of afterlife scoring level that I have. You need to understand your location and build a relationship. It's almost like you're going in and you're shaking hands with somebody and you're like, all right, we're going to be besties. Tell me everything about you. And then you never see them again. Why would you do that to a ghost? You're not going to do that to a human. So make the relationship. Doing these things repetitively this way, like it's only going to get you better as a ghost hunter and get you in a better understanding of how your equipment works, what the baselines are. The work is already done. You only have to do it once, maybe twice. If you see a difference, then obviously something's going on or happening. Take a look at your data. Do these locations more than one time. If 10 different paranormal teams do the exact same location at different times, and they all get super high scores, then we know that we might have a good most haunted candidate for that particular area. But until, like, I hate that phrase, most haunted. Get the hell out of here with that. There's no such thing. We don't have verifiable proof yet.
I honestly almost feel like this needs to be something every year. Like this, if we can get enough people start sending in to the almanac and sending you in workbooks, it should almost be like a small reward system, like, okay, most haunted of the year, or like best score of the year sent in comes from group, blah, blah, blah. Like that's
right.
Like a special edition add-in page somewhere in the almanac.
Yeah. And I wanted this to build a community. And I know I hate that word. I hate community. I hate the word family. You and I are friends. At this point, we're probably best friends, besides our spouses. Right. So, and I'm okay with the word friends. Let's build a whole giant team of friends. Right. They're all teams. They all contribute to the almanac. They see the value of it. They get their, small window of fame of me, posting their team logo or whatever in the almanac. They contribute by writing us an article. I wanted this to be the start of something bigger, of just not using cat balls on TikTok and saying, I'm a ghost hunter, right? So it should be, let's build this giant team of friends of we're learning from each other. What did you get? What did I get? And let's compare the notes. Oh, Nick's going to publish it for us. That's super great. Let's just do it that way. But that's the whole point of why I put on the back of every workbook. If you fill out these sheets and you send me the PDFs and the media to back up the claims that are in here, so I can see that you're not cheating the system, that's another thing. You did the score. You thought you had a pretty good night, thinking this is probably what an average night looks like, and you ended up with a below average score. That's okay. That's the whole point of it. I want you to see, like, what you thought was average or a great night actually turned out to be not so heavy. Because we're making sometimes mountains out of molehills. I was doing it before I created the system until I started looking at, like, how does this really work? I mean, I went through this for 4 to 5, 6 months before I said, this is what's probably going to work the best, but I can still tweak it as we kind of move along and take suggestions. I'm okay with that. That's why I'm okay with, like, the way you're drilling me about this. It is, I don't want to say a faultable system, but it can be changed and it should be questioned. But I believe this is a good bridge gap for us really spinning the wheels to come together, and really see what we can get out of the data that comes from these investigations.
Yeah, I really encourage, any of the groups out there that are curious about this to get an almanac or get a workbook, because I I personally would love to see more teams get inputted into the almanac, to compare the data and to really look at things. And I mean, if it's something as simple as just sending the data pages over to Nick and starting an email back and forth,
Right.
where you can start talking about, well, here's some of the evidence. Like, we're not here to steal evidence from you guys. We have plenty of that.
Right.
Like, we don't. We've got backlogs to the point of like Nick can't even find the investigation we want to look for because he's got
Right.
so many.
Right.
We're not looking to steal your evidence. We're not trying to take your claim to fame. We're trying to build, a database, something that can really start to be looked at. And Nick's system really pushes that into a reality. It's not just this, like, we're all going to get together and talk about how haunted my space was compared to your space.
Right.
It becomes a measuring contest. We don't need that.
Yeah.
I love putting it into the numbers and, letting Nick do the math because I don't want to. But I encourage people to really look into this. This is a really cool system that I think could be really helpful to a lot of ghost hunters, and it really does bring us down to that base and make us realize that sometimes we're a little more hopeful than we need to be, but it's okay.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely okay. And even if somebody does have a light night, or lower score, it's okay to turn those worksheets in. That adds to the data. We can study that. What were your conditions? Where were you? Those kind of things. And those are things that obviously I would notate inside of the almanac. Again, the almanac was born from the SITC Scoring System, which was the workbook. It's just an extension of that where we can stare at the data and study the hell out of it to see what the hell was actually going on this specific date. Is the date relevant? Is it the weather? Is it the UV rays? I'll be honest. I actually, and I think I put this in the almanac, was that the K index was measured for a year. And what I realized was that the K index, which is solar flares off the sun, had no bearing on the score. So if I had a high K index, we should essentially have a higher or much lower score. No, we were still finding it was just averages, and it was completely random. And I was keeping track of it. And then I changed it up, and I was like, maybe I should just do the average of the 2.5 hours that we're out here. So I was doing math before the tour, and I would actually take note of that, of the average, and the average still didn't make an impact. And I did that for probably 6 to 8 weeks before I just said, you know what? I'm not going to include K index. We now know that K index does not have a bearing on the SITC score and how haunted your investigations were. So, and that's okay. I learned something. Did I waste time? No, because I learned something from it. So if you have a low score, what's the difference? Or were you there on the wrong day? Go back, try again. That's the whole point of the system. Keep building those relationships with your ghost, showing respect, get the higher scores as you start to build that trust with them. And that's how this works. What else do you have, Josh? I mean, I could see another question somewhat brewing, almost like you're afraid to ask.
There's a lot of questions in there. I honestly, I really do want to see people turn in some of these sheets because I really do think it'd be fun to be able to do like a most haunted of the year. To start really building like that. To actually start the actual most haunted spaces, to give a real scored system to it.
Right.
And obviously there's going to be a lot of questions because we got people out there that use things like pendulums and Ouija boards and things that are obviously not in the booklet that can be scored. And I don't even know how we'd go about trying to, because we don't look at those as pieces of equipment really.
Yeah, it's more of an extension of the person using it. So if it's not electronic, then it is not measured. Because I did think about spirit boards and pendulums, and those types of things. So I thought on it because I know a lot of people use them, even dowsing rods. But again, it's pertinent to the user. Nobody's going to know the difference, but besides the user, with any of those items that I just mentioned. So it's a problem. It's not that I don't believe in them, but I just honestly don't feel like they can be measured in the way with the data we get from electronics. So that would be the difference. So will I ever incorporate that? I would say probably no at this point, but who knows what will happen 10 years from now when we can get electronic dowsing rods.
Well, what about mediumship? So I'm sure you have plenty of medium. You have friends that are mediums.
I do.
So are they able to be scored into the system?
I would say same way we would score a spirit box. So 1 point per verifiable communication.
Now, does that require anything other? Like, do they need to be brought into the location, blindfolded, not told where they are?
Oh, it needs to be controlled.
Yeah.
That's for certain. So it has to be controlled where the psychic medium does not know anything about the space whatsoever, and not being told where they're going. So like completely left in the dark, almost like an Estes method session, of the way at least I incorporate that particular method. Like I don't let my guests know anything about the space that are doing the Estes method. So I do the same thing with Carl if I take him somewhere. Like I don't tell him shit. Wear a jacket. It's going to be chilly. Oh, we're going to be outside? I didn't say that. I just said wear a jacket. It's going to be chilly. So I don't give him anything that's going to really give a tell of where we're going to be. So he usually starts automatic writing ahead of time. So I would count any verifiable piece of automatic writing as also communication. So that would also be 1 point each. Because a lot of times with that style of mediumship, you can get 4 to 8 pieces out of one sheet of paper. If you get the names, nouns, and numbers out of it that you can verify, like, again, there's probably 4 to 8 points right there. Just depends on how good they are.
Yeah. Well, I think that'd be an interesting additive, actually. I think that'd be something interesting to see added into the almanac coming forward. I think the hardest part of that whole thing would be the verifying. Because then you have a team, well, I've got 3 mediums, and
yeah,
it's like, okay, well, how do we verify that you drove them all, you tied them up, put them in your trunk, and drove them to location? Like, well, how did you do this?
Right, and it's the same thing with a spirit box. I can't monitor all 3 spirit boxes, and we only use one that's recordable. So the 2 others, I tell them, I'm going to be relying on you because you don't know everything about the space. So try to stay near somebody with a camera that's recording so we can at least get the audio from that. If we get like a disembodied voice coming out of an SB11, that's open speaker. But with the other one, it is headphoned. We use an SB7 Pro, and it's not recording because I'm not going to attach the voice recorder to it. I'm just going to let the person tell me the weird things that they're hearing, and I'll let them know if it matches. And that's where you start to see the patterns because they don't know the history.
Mm-hmm. Now, is it hard to have, like you said, 3 of those running at the same time?
Right.
Only one records.
Right.
You've got 3 different people talking to you at the exact same time. How are you keeping track of that to then turn it into the score?
So with what I'm doing, and this would probably work the same as an indoor location, I'm working completely outdoors. So I have 3 muggles listening to spirit boxes, and most spaces where we're doing spirit box work, it's a little bit more of an open space, and I do round robins with them, and I keep track on my notebook, like what they're hearing in real time. So with the recordable S-Box, obviously, I'm not looking to verify that person. I'm looking to add to those extra points. So I kind of use, like, when I write down something and it's something weird, like they heard red Coke can, obviously I'm going to write down red Coke can, and I'm going to remember that we are at this one space. So I'm still within the vicinity of time that if they hear anything else around this, or if I hear anything else around this, I'm still at this one location when I'm back at the office. Is it kind of like an audible marker, so to speak?
That makes sense. Well, I think I've pretty much bled dry every question I can come up with here.
And I'm going to do my best to dig through those investigations, find the highest score. And again, I was guessing because I know it was over 100, but not by like a vast amount of over, what the numbers that I provided. So if I am incorrect, I do apologize. But if I'm recalling the proper investigation it was a pretty crazy night, and I could be mixing them up. I'm not going to lie. I do a lot of these per year, and this was not within the past year. So it was a while ago that this actually occurred. So again, my apologies to the listener. I do about 200 of these a year. I cannot remember all of them in great detail. I can remember great stories from them, but can't always remember when the hell they happened.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point, and obviously if you find it, it can always be tacked on to the end of this is like, hey,
Right.
here's the actual data, here's some of the questions that we'd asked, and here's what it actually says in the reporting.
Right.
And as you said, it might get attached on later to where people will be able to pull that up and pull it out of the archives or dust it off. And
Nice. All right. Well, I honestly, I don't really have much else to say other than I'm with Josh. Make sure you're reaching out to me. If you picked up a workbook, if you haven't, first off, they're on Amazon. Just type in Paranormal Investigation Workbook, and anything that doesn't have the current year on it will go into a backlist price, but they're still available. So that way you can see how it evolved if you want to buy a cheaper one and take it to that route. So that's kind of how I'm listing them. They're always going to stay up on there. They're going to always be a different color, so you can grab the right book on the way to your investigation. But if you start using it and you have questions, I'm here. storiesinthecemetery@gmail.com. And I will answer you within 24 hours to the best of my ability. If you need a phone call, we'll work that out. But if you have the worksheets filled out and you have a good score or you have enough data that you want to send me, give me the media with it. Everything goes to storiesinthecemetery@gmail.com. I'll go through it, verify what you're saying, and then I'll congratulate you on filling it out and put you in the next almanac. Like it's going to be a big thing. So I'll keep track of the teams that do send things over so I can get your logos and your addresses and websites and all the things I need to help promote you and get you some business or show off your skill set. And you can be part of this huge project because I'm going to guess it's probably going to take about 10 to 12 years for this to really be a national thing, and then maybe even possibly international. So we got to start somewhere. It's getting recognized internationally, but recognition isn't giving me the sheets yet. We need people using the sheets. So again, that workbook is on Amazon. I hate for this to be a full-blown commercial, but I think we kind of turned it into a how-to episode, which was super great. So great job, Josh. Like that I'm glad that this didn't turn into me boasting about my milestones of accomplishments here. Yeah, it's not what I
keep you humble somehow. You're almost 90 years old at this point, so we gotta
93.6 is where I'm at.
Now you're a radio station.
I know, right? Rock 93.6. But yeah, this has actually been like you said, it's great to hear it come out, and I'm glad you asked hard questions, because if you're asking them, that means other serious investigators are going to be asking that, and this way I can just refer them back to the episode. So again, kudos to you, Josh. I appreciate you keeping this episode the way that it is. Guys, we do have some more kick-ass episodes coming your way. We're still looking for more people to send us questions that we will answer in one full episode. Like we'll do a whole episode of listener questions, which I think is going to be super fun. And then I'm trying to find the tab.
Ask more hard questions about the almanac.
Asking more. Yeah, great job, Josh. Let's see. And that's going to be near October. I think we're doing that one. And let's not forget, we are going to be doing an episode on what Scooby-Doo has taught us as paranormal investigators. I cannot wait for that episode. That's going to be freaking awesome.
Ruh-roh.
I know. But yeah, we have some really cool stuff coming up, guys. And again, next season, who knows where this is going to go? We may revisit some topics and kind of expand on them. But there's so much to talk about. We need you to keep listening. Leave us a review on Spotify. Leave us comments on Spotify. Subscribe. Again, you guys get all the things. Every podcast says it. I don't think we need to beat a dead horse with this, Josh. You got anything else for the listeners?
No, just remember not to ghost your ghost, and we'll hopefully see you guys when you turn in some of your almanac stuff.
And I'm going to just make one final joke. If you've been watching this video on YouTube, because I actually edited it, Josh looks like a shadow man dancing the entire time through this whole thing. Like, no, Josh, just keep your head still. Your whole body moves. It's weird.
I know.
Like, it's been doing it the whole time.
It's because I'm wearing a black shirt in a dark room with a background, man.
Thanks again, guys. We appreciate you. We will talk to you again in 2 weeks.
See you soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Stories in the Cemetery podcast. You can follow your host, Nicholas McGurr, on most social media platforms under the name Stories in the Cemetery. If you'd like to follow co-host Joshua Amen, you'll find him under the name Amen Paranormal Research. Be sure to check out the show notes for any links to specific articles written by your hosts and all the references used to create this episode. Happy hunting. We'll see you on the next episode of the Stories in the Cemetery podcast.